workshops in jails, I feel concerned as a citizen by the fact that jails exist nowadays. Whenever I do something, I am aware that there are people in jail. So at one point, I had to deal with it. What if I tried to do something as a photographer in jails? I say as a photographer, but it's more as a citizen who is concerned with this theme. But then, to me, the only way to get in, the only honest way, was to go as a photographer, but with an exchange. That is to say, I just came as somebody who's got something which is photography, as a possibility to exchange with people who do not have this luxury of dealing with art every day. In fact, it's a world to be still discovered, jails. It is, of course, something that's hidden, and from this point, you cannot really say that we know what's happening in jails. That is to say, the jail administration, its point is to hide what's behind the walls. I've been doing it for more than 15 years. I can say that according to the country, it's so different. It's totally different in all this Soviet Union system, because it's really remained exactly the same system as it was before. And all over Soviet Union, it's exactly the same kind of, archetype of what a jail looks like, even physically, the way prisoners are treated and so on. Of course, when I did it in France or in Ireland, for example, it's a totally, of course, new CEE, let's say westernized approach, but well, I must say, I'm not sure it's much better, especially Ireland. It was probably the toughest I've ever seen. And then when you go like to Central America, like Guatemala or Salvador, where I was recently, it's once again a totally new approach. I always start right away. I have my camera, I have cameras, these single-use cameras, I call them students. So the moment I enter the space, I'm trying to be active as soon as possible. I behave according to life. So I know that the questions I ask, I know that the way I move then inside the jail is a bit surprising to them, but after a while they totally accept it. They see I'm not sneaking, I'm not trying to show something they don't want me to be shown. And after a while, it's, there's all this fantasy about jail. When you're outside, well, you've got your whole vision, your personal vision of what it is, or what you think it is. But once you're inside, it's such a poor world. Poor in terms of everyday life, poor in terms of space, there's nothing happening. So this is the reason why when there is something happening, it's always so violent, so concentrated, because there's been so much nothingness before that the moment it happens, it has to be so violent. So when you start being like accustomed to in fact, well, it's jail, but it's not that much, and that's very surprising. When you give the kids the cameras, I will only work with teenagers, the first thing they say is, but there's nothing to be photographed here. I said, well, let's try to see if there's really nothing, or at least let's try to photograph this nothingness. And that's how we start. If we deal really with these teenagers in jails, you've got such, of course, but it's so obvious to say, but therapeutical, aspect of them taking pictures of themselves, you see? Identity. So, for example, some of them will never be able to get out of that very simple and reconstructing, rebuilding oneself, act, which is just pictures of me by others, by myself, but it really helps to recover at least some kind of identity. And those, I would say, who are more evolved, who have been able to push the reflection a bit further, they are those who will be able also to give an interpretation to all these various signs, you see. And I am there to not to tell them this is good, this is bad, really to push them, into their extremes, but artistical, creative extremes. And this they love, because there are always people who at one point really push it a bit too far. And they're always used to be on a leash. There's always somebody telling them, get back,
Yeah.
And what is surprising to them is the moment they feel it, they will have to get back. I push them a bit further, you see? And suddenly, wow, they really fall into a world which is called creation, And this is really incredible. This is, you open a big space. They like it, this kind of approach, this, photography on the spot. They really love it because it's very physical. And the other aspect is to feed them with books, with, either I show them films, all kinds of, different photographers. And of course, I show them very conceptual things, but I just show them that at one point, it always has to go throughout this physical aspect, which is you do it. You have to find a very material solution to your, let's say, inner questions. They probably go back to what they were, because the infrastructure doesn't help them afterwards, But maybe they will have, from time to time, a little frame in their eye. It's my way of being, of being in touch with, I consider, essential.